An ordinary teen's pain spirals into chaos as his powers turn him into a force no one can control. Andrew lives in Seattle with his ailing mother, Karen, and his abusive father, Richard. Isolated and overlooked at school, Andrew is a quiet outcast with almost no friends. He decides to buy a camera to document his life, hoping the presence of the camera will deter his father's aggression. He confronts Richard, announcing that he'll be recording everything. Afterward, Andrew visits his bedridden mother, who gently wishes him well for the day ahead. His cousin Matt, also his only close friend, picks him up for school. On the way, Matt rambles about philosophers and life, trying to share his insights while Andrew playfully mocks him. At school, Andrew films his surroundings, walking the camera through where he usually eats and spends time. A group of teens bully him, snatching his camera and mocking him before eventually giving it back. On the ride home, Matt invites Andrew to a party, insisting it'll do him good. Andrew resists but eventually gives in. That evening, while reviewing footage, his father storms into his room, yelling and slapping him. Richard shouts that Andrew needs to obey him, reminding him who's in charge. At the party, Andrew and Matt go their separate ways. Andrew records people dancing and laughing and notices a girl named Casey who also films her life for her vlog. Matt awkwardly tries to impress her with more philosophical talk. Things go sideways when a guy accuses Andrew of filming his girlfriend. Humiliated, Andrew flees to the parking lot and wipes dirt off his camera. Steve, a popular student and class president hopeful, unexpectedly approaches him. Steve invites Andrew to come along to check out something strange he and Matt discovered in the woods. Curious, Andrew follows. The three arrive at a hole in a clearing where eerie sounds echo from inside. Steve jumps in and they all climb deeper into a cavern where a large, glowing crystal pulsates with energy. As it hums louder, the crystal's vibrations intensify, and suddenly everything fades to black. Weeks later, the boys are in a backyard tossing a baseball. When Matt throws it towards Steve, the ball unexpectedly curves, hitting Steve from the side. Matt throws it at Andrew, who stops it mid-air with his mind. His nose bleeds, and he drops the ball. Inside, they float Lego pieces in the air with telekinetic precision, realizing the crystal has given them powers. They return to the original site, only to find the hole completely filled with dirt. Authorities are already there, warning them to stay away. On the ride home, Andrew and Steve open up about their families. Andrew reveals his father's past as a fireman who was injured and now survives on government support. Steve also confides some issues with his parents. That night, Andrew practices floating his camera alone in his room. He overhears Richard on the phone, desperately pleading for financial aid for Karen, revealing he can't afford her medication anymore. The next day, Andrew takes Karen out to the marina. They share a quiet, joyful moment together. Later, Andrew, Matt, and Steve meet up again and practice their powers by the lake, throwing stones telekinetically. Andrew asks Matt if he really likes him, and Matt admits he does, but says Andrew was once hard to reach. Andrew wonders aloud if they could do more with their abilities. At school, Matt suggests their powers are like a muscle. They'll only grow stronger with practice. Andrew and Steve sit atop a building overlooking Seattle, talking and joking. Steve admires Andrew's control over his telekinetic abilities, especially how he can float his camera with ease. Andrew opens up about his past, saying he's always felt different and disconnected. Steve encourages him, calling him a special person, not someone who needs to change. Andrew's confidence begins to grow, enjoying the rare moment of acceptance. Later that night, Andrew floats above the city alone, recording the glittering skyline. At school, Steve is nominated for prom king, and Andrew starts to get more attention. But things take a turn during a talent show when Andrew levitates objects in front of a live audience. The crowd is stunned and cheers, but Andrew loses control when someone throws something at him. Matt warns Andrew that he's drawing too much attention. Andrew brushes him off, saying he just wanted to feel what it's like to be noticed and liked. Things grow more tense at home. Karen's condition worsens, and Richard grows more hostile. Andrew continues refining his power in secret, isolating himself more. He uses his powers to pluck a spider's legs off slowly, testing his precision. One night, Richard violently attacks Andrew, blaming him for their life falling apart. In a rage, Andrew uses his power to slam Richard against the wall, nearly killing him but stopping just short. He flees the house, shaking. Meanwhile, Steve notices Andrew's distance and tries to help. He flies to find him during a thunderstorm, begging him to stop isolating himself and to let people in. Andrew accuses Steve of pretending to be his friend just to feel better about himself. Tempers flare, and lightning strikes Steve mid-air, killing him instantly. At Steve's funeral, Matt blames Andrew, furious that things have spiraled out of control. Andrew refuses to answer and flies off. He later returns to Steve's grave and tearfully apologizes, saying he didn't know what happened and lost control. He visits the crater where they first got their powers and sees it's now covered in strange patterns and grass. Back at school, Andrew is ridiculed for what happened at the party. Even the pink-haired girl mocks him with her friends. Pushed over the edge, he uses his power to violently pull out a bully's teeth. Alone in a bathroom stall, he records himself showing the teeth and recounting how he did it. At a junkyard, Andrew speaks to his camera about evolution, calling himself an apex predator, someone above moral constraints. He demonstrates his growing strength by crushing a car. Matt, having heard what Andrew did, confronts him at home. He insists they must follow rules to avoid catastrophe, warning Andrew that he'll stop him if he continues. Andrew refuses to listen, catching Matt's punch mid-air. Matt leaves, troubled by how far Andrew has fallen. Andrew tries to buy his mother's medication from a pharmacy, but doesn't have enough money. Desperate and out of options, he dons his father's old firefighter suit and sets out to steal. He starts with a group of men who've always bullied him, violently knocking them out using his telekinesis and stealing their money. Then he hits a gas station, disabling the cashier and raiding the cash register. But as he's leaving, the cashier retaliates with a shotgun. Andrew deflects it, but the blast hits a gas tank, causing a huge explosion. He's caught in the blast and set ablaze before blacking out. Andrew wakes up in a hospital where Richard visits him with devastating news. Karen has died. Richard blames Andrew, claiming she wouldn't have died if he hadn't disappeared. He yells at Andrew to apologize until Andrew wakes up and blasts a hole through the hospital wall. At a birthday party, Matt senses something's wrong as his nose starts bleeding. He sees the hospital explosion on the news and rushes there with Casey. When they arrive, they find Andrew lifting Richard into the air before dropping him. Matt catches Richard, but Andrew finds them and lifts them both onto the Space Needle. He drops them, forcing Matt to fly Casey down to safety. Andrew begins terrorizing the city. Matt flies up to him, begging him to stop and promising a new life together. But Andrew is consumed by rage and hurls a bus at him. A brutal battle erupts across the city. Cars, buildings, and streets are torn apart as the two cousins fight in midair. Matt tries to reason with Andrew, but Andrew doesn't care who gets hurt. The police arrive and open fire, wounding Matt. Andrew retaliates by blasting them back and escaping. The final showdown takes place in a plaza. Surrounded by police, Andrew stops their bullets mid-air and unleashes a psychic scream that causes buildings to tremble and debris to fall. Matt begs him to stop, but Andrew's too far gone. Left with no choice, Matt lifts a statue's spear and fatally impales Andrew. Everything goes silent. Andrew's body floats briefly before flying away. Later, Matt is seen flying over snowy mountains, talking to the camera like he's talking to Andrew. He points it toward peaceful Tibetan temples before saying goodbye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. See you in the next one.